Welcome to the Four Witnesses of the Messiah, Chapter 1, Session 8b, Jesus' Early Years. We're almost done laying the foundation for our in-depth study of the Gospels. I'm looking forward to applying our full set of hermeneutic tools to strip away the layers of theological speculation which have been heaped upon our Lord's ministry and view His words and accomplishments in the true light of their functions in that time and their import for ours. We must understand that we cannot allow the Greek philosophical contamination to have its way that resulted in Orthodox Christianity. We must maintain a Semitic viewpoint because Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. He came to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He fulfilled biblical prophecy. His accomplishments would then affect the rest of the world. We now are going to take up where we left off at the last session. The wise men had just arrived in Bethlehem. That was event 1.24. The wise men go to Bethlehem. And that was in Matthew chapter 2, verse 11. Matthew 2:11. It says, when they were come into the house, there they were in a house, not a stable, they saw the young child, not a baby, with Mary his mother. And they fell down and worshipped him. And when they opened their treasures, plural, they presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, what convinced the wise men that they were at the right place? Well, there were a number of children in Bethlehem that were the correct age. Well, how do they confirm that they were in the right place? Well, first of all, it was the prophecy in Micah that it was going to be in Bethlehem. Okay. But how do they know they had found the right child? Well, you had that synchronization of Jupiter standing overhead when they arrived. It was standing at its meridian, and also it just started going into retrograde motion again. 15 months later, after that triple conjunction with Regulus, it's doing it again. And when it does that retrograde motion, it stops for 6 days, and then it starts going backwards, apparently, against the backdrop of the star. So you had that happened. Second was the memory of what the shepherds had told everyone. Well, how'd that work? Well, the caravan would have arrived in Bethlehem with all the regalia of an ambassadorial visit. And they probably would have stopped at the caravanserai, the motel that's along the caravan route there, and then immediately sent for the elders of the gate of Bethlehem. You see, every city had elders of the gate. They were the wise men of that city, and they were there to settle minor civil matters. Okay, remember in the book of Ruth, that's where they settled that land sale. All right. But anyway, the elders of the gate, Magi came up to them and they asked them, same question they asked in Jerusalem, where is he who was born King of the Jews? And they replied, oh, they're in that house right over there. Well, how did the elders of the gate know that? Well, remember the night the child was born, the local shepherds had that vision of angels that said he was the Savior, Christ the Lord, remember? And then Luke said that, quote, they made known abroad the saying which was told them concerning this child. So they told everybody. The angels had told them, quote, unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And it says everyone who heard about that wondered. Well, it was less than 2 years later. So when the Magi showed up, asked the elders of the gate, oh, he's right over there in that house. So now, tradition says that there were 3 wise men. Not so. Because if there were only 3, they would have been robbed by the highwaymen who raided the caravan routes along the borders between the empires. No, there were 3 kinds of gifts, not 3 wise men. Now, why did they bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh? Well, what do you bring to a baby shower for a boy? Blue stuff, right? What do you bring for a girl? Pink stuff, right? Well, what do you bring when you don't know the sex of the child at the baby shower before the baby's born? I think you bring yellow, don't you? I'm not sure. Other cultures bring other colors. I think in Korea they bring orange for a boy. But what do you bring for the birth of a king in that era? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. That was just what the culture dictated. And since they had a caravan, it probably was a lot of gold, a lot of frankincense, and a lot of myrrh. Verse 11 then says that the Magi fell down and worshipped the child. Well, were they uncoordinated and unsteady afoot? No. That was the custom of showing respect in their culture. They salamed, or prostrated themselves. Every culture has a gesture of showing respect. How low you go depends on the culture. Like chubby checker, limbo lower now, limbo lower now. How low can you go? Ee-ah. Every limbo boy and girl all around the limbo world gonna do the limbo rock all around the limbo clock. Jack be limbo, Jack be quick, Jack go under limbo stick all around the limbo clock. Hey, let's do the limbo rock. Sorry, I was having a 50s moment. How low can you go? Well, in some cultures, they nod the head. Some bow the head. Some bend at the waist. Some bend the knee. Some fall on the knee. And some bow flat. Their culture determines how low they go. Even in America, when 2 men pass one another on the sidewalk, we acknowledge each other's presence some way, in some gesture or a look or whatever. It's a show of respect. And to not acknowledge them is disrespectful. Now, you women, you have your own set of singles. Anyway, the Greek word for that bowing is proskuneo. P-R-O-S-K-U-N-E long O. Now, that word in Greek has 2 meanings. The first one is to worship. The second one is to bow or salam. But there's a controversy regarding proskuneo with Jesus, because some say that we should worship Jesus. And they point out scriptures where Jesus, or pronouns referring to him, are objects of that verb, proskuneo, and then the Bible translations translate it worship. However, in 1977, I discovered via my inductive research that there's a pattern with proskuneo that some don't want to acknowledge. Because when the object of the verb, proskuneo, is in the accusative case in Greek, proskuneo means to worship like we think of it. Mental, prayerful adoration of a deity. However, when the object of that verb, proskuneo, is in the dative case, it affects the meaning of the verb, and that one means to give an act of homage to, like when they bow or salam. Now, this pattern, Like I said, I discovered it through my inductive research, letting the Word dictate itself. This pattern is throughout the New Testament, and Jesus or pronouns referring to him are never in the accusative case where it means worship. Now, some may say, oh, no, there's one. Well, wait a minute, because there is textual evidence that one should be omitted. So, there you go. But anyway, when I've mentioned this, some have even denied that Greek verbs can do that. But there are some other Greek verbs that do that, where the meaning of the verb changes because of the case of the object. For instance, the verb akouo, A-K-O-U-O, which means to hear. Well, it has a different meaning when followed by an accusative case object than when it's followed by an object in the genitive case. In fact, acknowledging that solves an apparent contradiction in the accounts of Paul when he was confronted by Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus, because one account says that the others with Paul heard the voice, while another scripture says they did not hear the voice. And people point that out and say, see, there's a contradiction in the word. Well, Bullinger solves that because he details the solution in his Acts 9:7 companion Bible note. And he recognizes that the difference in the meaning of the verb akouo when followed by the accusative versus the genitive. So, akouo is a verb that's affected that way. Well, if there's one, there might be other ones, and there are. So, it's a plausible rule with proskuneo and Greek. The critics just don't want to acknowledge that. And there are enough instances of this in the New Testament to state it as a hard and fast rule. Proskuneo plus a dative object means to give an act of homage to salam. But when proskuneo has an accusative object, accusative case in the Greek, then it means worship, as if we are worshiping a god. Look at Matthew chapter 4, verse 9. Matthew chapter 4, verse 9. Here Jesus is being tempted by the adversary, and he says to him, all these things will I give you if you will fall down and proskuneo me. And the word me is in the dative case. So, worship actually there should be translated, do homage to me, salam me. Verse 10. Then said Jesus unto him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt proskuneo, worship, the Lord thy God. Lord and God are in the accusative case. So that is where it really does mean worship. And him only shalt thou serve. You know, the devil would have even settled for an act of homage and not outright worship. But Jesus knew better. There are many instances in the New Testament like this. But the pattern's even maintained in the Septuagint. Look at Genesis 18:1. Genesis 18:1. Here, this is with Abraham and the appearance of the angels. And the Lord appeared unto him, Abraham, in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed proskuneo himself towards the ground upon the earth. Now, The King James translators knew it could be either translated worship or bow. So they here translated it bowed. All right? So they knew of the existence of this other meaning. Look at Genesis 19:1. Genesis 19:1. And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed proskuneo, with his face toward the ground. Okay? Now, he bowed himself with his face. With his face is to, prosopon, and the to has the dative case ending. That's an omega with an iota subscript underneath it. That's how you can recognize dative case in Greek. And so this is proskuneo with the dative. So that means he bowed himself. All right? Now, did Lot worship the two angels? No. He salaamed with his face toward the ground. It was an act of homage. Look at Genesis 23, verse 7. Genesis 23, verse 7. This is when Abraham is negotiating to purchase the gravesite for Sarah. And Abraham stood up and bowed proskuneo himself to the people of the land. And the people in Greek is to lao. And the long O, that's an omega with an iota subscript suffix. That's the signal for dative case. So he didn't worship the people of the land. No, this is proskuneo with a dative object. He bowed to them. All right? He salaamed. It was a show of respect. Another one, Genesis 42:6. Genesis 42:6. And Joseph was the governor of the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. So here he is. He's the grand vizier of King Pharaoh. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed proskuneo down themselves before him. The before him is to him in the dative case. So this is proskuneo plus the dative case object. They bowed. They didn't worship Joseph. Now, they didn't know who he was yet. All right, but they worshipped him. No, they bowed themselves. They salaamed with respect. All right. Another one, Genesis 43:26. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed themselves to him. The to him, again, is dative case. They prostrated themselves. They salaamed. Okay? So even in the Septuagint. So what I'm telling you is a proven Greek grammatical and lexical rule. It is an expansion upon the influence of prepositions when used in verb prefixes. Even A.T. Robertson admits this for other verbs, but he couldn't bring himself to admit it for proskuneo. But, who am I? I don't have any initials after my name to challenge A.T. Robertson. But I can read and I can think and I can analyze inductively and see the details, and the details don't lie. All right? Now, I might not be able to debate very well because I don't know that format nor the strategies. I wasn't on the debate team in high school. But I ain't interested in style points or impressions. I'm captivated by the truth. And the pattern is consistent. It's even in the Septuagint. So it is a rule of Koine Greek usage. All right, back to the account of the Magi. There is even more there to talk about, because can you imagine their joy? They had just played a starring role in the story of the ages. Starry in more senses of the word. Wow. Double wow. Purple smoke wow. And for those geeks, it would have been purple smoke squared or even cubed. Whatever shape you want. It's joy unimaginable. Or, like Renee said, it makes him giddy. But Matthew chapter 2, verse 12 now continues. Matthew 2:12. And being warned, that's divinely instructed, of God in a dream, that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. Now, they were warned of God in a dream. It was not an angel. It was not something in concretion. It was a dream. Now, that small piece of information has profound implications. Because what's the spiritual significance of that? Well, first of all, if it were in a dream, how would one remember it? We all dream when we sleep. But which dreams do we remember? The ones that wake us up, right? Well, that definitely is a valid way that God still uses to talk to His people today. I mean, that's how God communicates to me. My mind is so active, plus I've told you, I've had tinnitus as long as I can remember. So, my intelligence is not innate ability, as some have. My intelligence, actually, is a reaction to a handicap. That's humbling. Just like blind folks often have a heightened sense of hearing, well, my intellect is the byproduct of my mind fighting against that constant din in my ears, and it is loud. But God has crafted a way that He can still get through to me in flashes of inspiration, epiphanies, in my waking moments. God will do stuff like that for each of us. So, just get busy walking for Him. And there will be a necessity then for more communication. You know, that doesn't happen for Christian couch potato know-it-alls. It happens for those who venture out of their mountains of knowledge into the valleys of human need to reach out with God's hand of mercy. Woo! Holy Spirit is always a custom installation in believers. God works with us differently. But now let's think about this. Put on your thinking cap. Because what was needed for God to be able to speak to those wise men like that? The Magi had to have the Spirit upon them, right? Wow. Were they prophets? Were they Jews? No. They were Gentiles. Were they circumcised? Had they become Jewish proselytes? Had they gone through the ceremonies? Were they official? No. But when we know how the Spirit works, that little detail, wow, think about that. What does that mean? Hallelujah. Sock it to you. It makes me think of Paul's doctrinal bridge in Romans 2. Please turn to Romans 2. Romans chapter 2, verse 1. It says, "Therefore thou art inexcusable, O man, whoever thou art that judges. For wherein thou judgest another, thou condemns thyself. For thou that judgest doest the same things. But we are sure that the judgment of God is according to truth against them that commit such things. And thinkest thou this, O man, that judges them which do such things, and does the same, that thou shalt escape the judgment of God? Or despisest thou the riches of his goodness and forbearance and long-suffering, not knowing the goodness of God leads thee to repentance? But after thy hardness and an impenitent heart treasures up unto thyself wrath against the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of God. You know, the hard-hearted, entitled, judgmental Pharisees and the arrogant, stuck-up, intellectual Sadducees thought they were the coolest cat's pajamas. They were so cool, like MC Hammer. Oh, can't touch this. Oh, can't touch this. No, siree, because here's a big wake-up call with those magi who had the Spirit. Look at Romans chapter 2, verse 6. God says, who will render to every man according to his deeds, to them who by patient continuance in well-doing seek for glory and honor and immortality may get eternal life. But unto them that are contentious and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, they get indignation and wrath and tribulation and anguish upon every soul that does evil, of the Jew first, and also of the Gentile. But glory and honor and peace to every man that works good, to the Jew first, and also to the Gentile, for there is no respect of persons with God. What? You know, God can do anything he wants. Why? Well, he's God. Remember, he said, I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy to whom I will show mercy. Remember who said that? That God's our God. Wow. Romans chapter 2, verse 12. For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law, and as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. For when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these, having not the law, are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. In the day when God shall judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ according to my gospel, Paul said, Whoa, Nelly, God is no respecter of persons. How beautiful, how wondrous, how glorious. If he did that for the wise men, he could do that for any man that believed. You know what? I think there are going to be a lot of surprises at the resurrections, because our God is a fair and merciful God. I don't care what anybody thinks, because what they think doesn't matter anyway, because can they judge? No, siree. So on that wondrous day of the resurrection of the just, who do we know for sure are going to be there, along with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, and all the rest who had the Spirit upon them? The wise men will be there too. Oh, wow! Who'd ever thunk that? Of course, others who did not have the Spirit, who passed their final test, will be there too. And the resurrection of the just, well, praise the Lord and hallelujah. Well, guess what? There's more to this. just airlifted in via an early morning December 4th epiphany for me. This is the kind of stuff we want to learn when we will be looking at the Gospels with new eyes in this class. This is the purple smoke that signifies this ministry, dared to be called the next Reformation Church. Well, I didn't call it that. It just jumped out and inspired utterance when I was teaching a long time ago in 1998. Besides, who am I anyway? I ain't nothing special, except I can read the Bible and think. I ain't even some special prophet that God talks to in a voice. But He gets it to me however He can. This is the kind of stuff that the Apostle Paul realized when he was out in the Arabian desert when talking with Christ Jesus. This is the kind of stuff that built that doctrinal bridge in Romans between the Old Testament and the New. So here we go with what I learned yesterday morning. Was Balaam a Jew? Yet he had the Spirit of God upon him, and he prophesied of the Messiah. Was Naaman a Jew? Yet he believed even as the Secretary of Defense to the pagan Assyrian king. Was the Queen of Sheba a Jew? Yet she marveled and believed. Wow! Now we can consider Paul's next step in his Romans logic, because when was Abraham justified? When he was circumcised as a Jew, or before that? When he believed. Yeah, there it is. That is the doctrinal bridge between Judaism and Christianity, between the Old Testament and the New. What ism is that? Well, do we need initials after our name to call it original Christianity? Whoa, Nellie. Well, all right. I don't want to beat anyone over the head with a limbo stick, but I got to say this to those who have gone too low, in my opinion. There are believers today that repudiate the Apostle Paul. They teach that he was a liar. Yeah. And they force a wedge between Jesus and Paul. I think that's broadcasting ignorance in a loud voice. Well, I can't stop them from spewing out that stuff. Well, I don't. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe they're building for whatever will form the basis for what will be believed when some of them get left behind after the gathering together. Oh, whoa, Nellie. Ooh. That'll be the biggest hallelujah socket to you ever. Well, then they may eject the baloney and build on what's good. And for all the details concerning this, I invite you to take the One Hope of Original Christianity class. And after that word from our sponsor, we return to our regularly scheduled program. Woo! The Magi returned to the Parthian Empire via a different route. For after leaving the deranged and dangerous Herod high and dry, they couldn't go north on the King's Highway past Jerusalem, because Herod would have been looking for them. So I figure that they went south and then turned east when they got below the Dead Sea, south of it. And then they took the King's Highway a little bit further south, past Petra to Ezen-Geber. That's down by the Gulf of Aqaba. And then there is a caravan route that went east from there through the desert to Tema and Duma, up through to Babylon. When they got to Babylon, they were in the safety of the Parthian Empire again. And then I bet they told everyone that they could about what happened. Wow. Next event 1.25. Mary, Joseph, and Jesus flee to Egypt. Look at Matthew 2:13. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there again until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed into Egypt. Well, how many teenagers would do that in the middle of the night? Well, Joseph did. He obeyed. He was warned in a dream, right? So he was asleep. It was at night, all right? And later it says they left by night. Well, what does that tell you? They left that night. The angel said, flee, right? Well, Joseph did what he was told right away. But here's something else deep to think about. How were they able to survive in Egypt? Well, wait a minute. They now had valuables. Woo! They had gold. They had frankincense. They had myrrh, right? Rude says that the pure oils of myrrh and frankincense were more valuable than their weight in gold. So, Joseph could go right over to Avis, rent a camel, and buy one outright. Look, I'll trade you some of this myrrh or frankincense for it. Oh, this myrrh, it's really good stuff. It's Mecca red. Woo! No. Anyway, so let's think about this. Why did God bring the wise men there? Did Mary and Joseph need any more convincing? No. Did Jesus benefit from their adoration? No. He was a 15-month-old toddler. Wise men. Yes, baby Jesus. They're wise men. Camel. Yes, baby Jesus. That's a camel. Want to ride on a camel? Fun. Well, no. Why did God bring them there? To bring them gold, frankincense, and myrrh, valuable things that they could use to flee and survive in Egypt on short notice. God, in His foreknowledge, knew they needed quick. He knew it way back when He spun the planets long ago. Why did God do those celestial fireworks? Did He do it to show off? No. Who's He need to impress? He's God. He did it like He did the celestial gospel, so that people of every era one day would believe. The greatest scientific proof. You see, everything that God does has both an immediate and an ultimate profit, something that goes on and on and on. So, in addition, He did it so that the wise men could supply the family of Jesus with what they needed right then to survive. Well, think about that next time you have a need. If God needs to move heaven and earth to supply your need, He will, because He's no respecter of persons. If you need a coin from a fish's mouth, go catch it. God can tell you where to cast your net. And His promises are yea and amen. Woohoo! But there's a deeper lesson. Because you know what? God could have zapped stuff. He could have told them to hide out in the desert and sent ravens to airlift in food to them whenever they needed it, like He did for Elijah. Or He could have sent them angels with superfood, like He did, which sustained Elijah for weeks. He could even make it rain manna, right? But God chose to share the glory with His agents, the wise men. Why? Because He loves us. Imagine how God had reached out to the wise men through His artwork in the stars, like the bait that the Aramaic poet wrote about, I talked about last week. They participated in His plan by their free will, and they will be rewarded forever. Likewise, God has a plan for us. glories await. Do you know what his plan is for you? Well, get busy walking for him, talking for him, serving for him, and you'll find out. He spun the planets. He moved heaven and earth. They're bringing the Magi there with their gifts, which facilitated the ability of Mary and Joseph and Jesus to get out of town and live in a foreign land. Well, God's going to share eternity with us too. So what glories await? I think those riches supplied the family with what they needed to survive, and I would like to think it also paid for Jesus' education. We learn later that Jesus was a precocious child. Well, what do you expect? Bible scrolls were very expensive. God provided for the family and his son. He is cattle on 1,000 hills. So Matthew chapter 2, verse 15, they were there in Egypt until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, out of Egypt I have called my son. Next event, event 1.26, Herod's wrath. Matthew chapter 2, verse 16. Matthew 2:16. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding angry, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Wow. This terrible event highlights the utter depravity and evil of Herod. He definitely was a child of the devil who was willing to do anything for power. He was despised by the Jews, for he represented the Roman dominion over them. But Herod tried every trick in the book to win the Jews' favor. He married into the descendants of the Maccabee Hasmoneans. He lavishly embellished the Second Temple to try to win favor, but to no avail. He promoted massive building projects which rivaled Solomon in greatness, but to no avail. He was still hated. The accounts of Josephus, who was a historian contemporary with the Jewish rebellion of 66 through 70 AD, his accounts are rife with Herod's family's escapades, telling even of Herod's murder of his own sons. Alexander, Aristobulus, and later Antipater, all three of those sons, in response to Herod's fears for their alleged plots. There were other deathbed and disinheriting and purges commanded by Herod just before he died in 1 BC, not 4 BC, but 1 BC, as Dr. Ernest Martin proved. So, this evil deed that's called the slaughter of the innocents is not out of character for him at all. Herod had diligently inquired of the wise men when the star had appeared. So that's why he chose to murder the children 2 years old and under, not just infants. Matthew chapter 2, verse 17. Then was that fulfilled which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, in Ramah there was a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they are not. The fact that a prophecy was fulfilled is a marker that few realize the significance of. It just wasn't a mere prophecy fulfillment, because prophecy fulfillments are a spiritual firework that mark something important. So, whenever it says a prophecy was fulfilled, look for some significance, because something important is marked. But why was this so awful of an event spiritually deemed important enough to mark in this way? I think this is one of those things which one must not view from a human perspective, but a divine one, because those families and babies were totally innocent. They just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. They were collateral damage in the ancient enmity between the adversary and the woman that was spoken of in Genesis 3:15. And I think that they shall be compensated in eternity. And the prophecy fulfillment is a spiritual firework to mark that. A generation later, Jesus would teach, "Blessed are those who mourn." When are they going to be blessed? At the resurrection. Next event 127. The families return to Nazareth. So, chapter 2, verse 19 of Matthew. When Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, "Arise, take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead, which sought the young child's life." And he arose and took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea, in the position of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither, notwithstanding being warned of God in a dream. He withdrew and took refuge into parts of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in the city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, "He shall be called a Nazarene." Now, verse 23 sounds like they're going to Nazareth for the first time, but that's not the case. Remember, when Gabriel appeared to Mary back in Luke 1:26, she was in Nazareth. Now, there's no scripture that documents this prophecy, but Shane Height points out that it doesn't say it was written, it says it was spoken by the prophets. Well, you know what? Prophets spoke many things that never made it into writing. So, this had to be part of the oral tradition. But who would have remembered that? Folks from Nazareth, of course. The family probably was in Egypt less than a year. The wise men had come in December of 2 BC. Herod died about a month later, January 1 BC. So, as soon as a couple months later, they could have come back. Or, I originally had thought maybe they could have waited another couple months and disappeared into the crowds coming in and then leaving after the next Passover. However, in the uncertain times after Herod died, it was unsafe even to do that, because Herod had left things in such a mess, and his unlikely successor after he had killed off all these other sons, now the youngest one, Archelaus, unexpected, was king, and he caused a revolt by murdering 3,000 Pharisees. And in response to the further Jewish unrest, he even canceled Passover that year. Wow. But somehow the family got back to Nazareth. Next event 1.28. Jesus' childhood years. This is in Luke chapter 2, verse 40. And it says, "And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him." This summarizes the next decade of Jesus' life. But this brings up a question. When did Jesus receive the Spirit? Many may assume that the child Jesus had the Spirit upon him, similar to John the Baptist. You know, you remember those fabricated childhood gospels that allege that Jesus grew up doing miracles and stuff like that? Well, what does the Word say? It actually says that Jesus did not receive the Spirit until he was baptized. What? Is that really true? Well, look at Luke 2:40. it says he waxed strong in spirit. Well, guess what? The words in spirit, which seem to say that Jesus had the Spirit upon him, those words are not in the text. Lockman, Tischendorf, Tregelles, Alford, and Nessel-Aland omit it. It is in Codex Alexandrinus, but it is absent from Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus and other manuscripts. Well, if Jesus did not have the Spirit yet, how did he learn? Well, same as we do, except his parents had the Spirit upon them. Now, this fact became a point of contention about Jesus and the Spirit. As the Greek influence invaded and then hijacked Semitic Christianity, the foreign ideas of the pre-existent Logos, that agent through whom the perfect, immovable mover, Greek conception of God, who created the world, they say, that invaded and tried to change who Jesus was. Well, the Apostle John wrote his gospel and his epistles to confront that error. Look at 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. It says, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God." Here it is. "Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that confesses not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is that spirit of Antichrist, whereof you've heard that it should come, and even now already it is in the world." Well, the Apostle John was standing up against this Gnostic Greek invasion, and he put forth what I call the litmus test of truth. In chemistry, the litmus test is a fundamental tool that tells the investigator whether a substance is acid or base. It's a true-false, yes-no test. Is the test paper red, or is the test paper blue? As such, there has to be some precision implied. I mean, if this test is meant to tell the difference between truth and error, it definitely is not going to deal with things in general terms. So, to focus in and see this precision, there are a few words in the translation there in 1 John 4 that we need to clearly define in order to understand how it was designed to precisely divide between truth and error. The first thing to consider is the word confess. It's the Greek word homologeo. This word does not mean to simply say something. It means to say the same thing as you really mean. To confess, to profess, to aver that it is true. Its use in Romans 10:9 and 1 John 1:9, those kind of confessions demonstrate this specific kind of forthright speech that's required. You know, you can get a drunk person to say Jesus is Lord, but if they don't really mean what they say, they won't become born again right then, will they? No. Or when we're confessing our sin, we may say, "Oh, God, I'm sorry for this sin." But we think to ourselves, "Boy, it sure felt good." Well, is that a confession? I don't really think so. Because if we didn't really mean it, what do you think God thinks? He's no dummy. So this confession here in 1 John 4 has to be on par with those other confessions. Getting born again, confessing sin. So one must say it and mean it with no hidden agendas and no double meanings. You see how that precision is required? It's the litmus test of truth. All right? Now, next, we have to understand the expression, Jesus Christ is come. All right? The word come is erchomai in Greek. Just like other common words go or make, it can have many meanings. and it often occurs in idiomatic expressions. It's very interesting that the Gospel of John uses an expression regarding Jesus Christ, quote, coming into the world, unquote, a number of times. Look at John chapter 1, verse 9. John chapter 1, verse 9. It says, that was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. There it is. Well, how did every man come into the world? They were born. Therefore, this is an idiom, coming into the world, meaning to be born. Now, did every man that comes into the world, did they pre-exist? Absolutely not. I mean, in John 9, when Jesus was asked about the man who was born blind, did he sin that he was born blind? Oh, Jesus didn't even dignify that crazy mystic notion with an answer. He just said no. All right? Look at John chapter 6, verse 14. John 6, 14. Then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, this is the truth, that prophet that should come into the world. Well, we know now they meant to be born. John 11, 27. John 11, 27. She said to him, Jesus, yeah, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. She meant to be born. Look at John 18. John 18, verse 37. Pilate, therefore, said to him, to Jesus, are you a king then? Jesus answered, you say I'm a king. To this end I was born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone that is of the truth hears my voice. See, the idiom there is literally come into the world associated with being born. That's very clear. So, to come into the world is an idiomatic expression, meaning to be born. There's no guesswork, no virtue signaling, no intimidation with after-name initials. The word says so. It defines its own terms. And very importantly to note in John 1:9, all men coming into the world, i.e. being born. So there's absolutely no implication of any pre-existence. Now, a variation of this expression is simply to come. In Matthew 18:11, for the Son of Man is come to save that which was lost. Or 1 John 5:6, is come in the flesh. It fits with this connotation of being born. So, now, precisely when did Jesus come in the flesh? When he was born. All right? The next bit of information that can be derived is from the tense, the verb tense of the word come. It's perfect tense. So that conveys a sense of completeness. So, it's not implying a coming in stages or some kind of unfoldment. It's implying a completeness of coming, like in a finished act. Consequently, it implies that all of him, whatever he was, came when he came in the flesh. Ordinarily with you or me, us ordinary human beings being born, and that wouldn't be an issue. However, because of the late first century Greek theological pre-existence error that was creeping in from Gnosticism surrounding the Messiah and his birth, I think that the perfect tense here was purposefully inserted to add a greater level of precision. So, finally, we have to understand the phrase in the flesh. It's not with the flesh. It's in the flesh. What's that mean? It's totally in that category, flesh. So, we have to confess this stuff and say what we really mean with no double talk, No hidden meanings, no hidden agendas. One of the benefits of Greek is it's very precise. One of the ways it conveys this detail is with prepositions. Euclid used prepositions in his dissertation on geometry, and the nuances in that influenced the Greek language ever since. So now we're ready with this phrase to test this and bring out the intended and required precision that needs to be there. It's the litmus test of truth. We got to fight truth decay. So here it is. Here's the test. When Jesus came at birth, was he completely in the category of flesh? What say you? On the first day of Jesus' life, when he was an infant, when he was a child, was whatever he was totally in the flesh? Well, when did he receive the Spirit? Not when he was born, but when he was baptized. John the Baptist was the only one to have the Spirit on him from his birth. Now, the Gnostics say that Jesus was a body possessed by a spirit. Failed the test. Trinitarians say that he was a God-man. Failed the test. Neither of those beliefs can unequivocally confess that that which comprised their Messiah at birth was totally in the flesh category. No, you have to confess it. You have to mean what you say and say what you mean. No double talk, no hidden agendas. He's either in it or not. The apostles confessed that he was neither of those things that the Gnostics or the Trinitarians said. So we and the apostles pass the litmus test of truth. Hurrah! So, event 129. Jesus as a precocious child. So now we're in Luke 2:41. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when Jesus was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. And when they had fulfilled the days, as they returned, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem. And Joseph and his mother knew not of it. But they, supposing him to have been in the company, went a day's journey, and they sought him among their kinfolk and acquaintance. See, when they traveled to the Passover and back from Galilee, they traveled in large groups for safety in caravans. It was a bunch of like-minded believers traveling together, so you know what it was like. It was like a big party. Yeah, right? Mary and Joseph thought Jesus was with his buddies. They probably realized he wasn't when they got around Jericho, one day's journey, and they couldn't find him, so they turned back. Luke chapter 2, verse 45. And when they found him not, they turned back again to Jerusalem seeking him. It came to pass that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both hearing them and asking them questions. You know what? Jesus could have even been talking with Hillel or his successor, because 10 A.D. was the year that Hillel died. And Jesus was born on Rosh Hashanah in 3 B.C., as we've seen. So Jesus became 12 on Tishri the 1st in 9 A.D., and he was still 12 after Passover in 10 A.D., because there's no 0 year between B.C. and A.D. Ages were reckoned with the non-accession year counting, inclusive counting, in Tishri to Tishri years by the Jewish calendar, where a portion of years counted as a year. So, 3 B.C., 2 B.C., 1 B.C., 1 A.D., 2 A.D., 3 A.D., 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 12 years. And this had absolutely nothing to do with a bar mitzvah. You know why? That traditional initiation ceremony for Jewish boys did not exist in Jesus' day. It began centuries later. Wow. Luke chapter 2, verse 47. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. The verb astonish is in the Greek imperfect tense. That's continuous action or repeated action in the past. So that indicates that they were not merely astonished at one point in time. It was continuous, over and over and over. Jesus was giving them a dose of purple smoke. Woo! Luke chapter 2, verse 48. And when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, Son, why have you thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. And he said to them, Why is it that you sought me? Wish you not that I must be about my father's business? And they understood not the saying which he spake unto them. Now, I did not understand how verse 49 and verse 50 went together as they are translated in King James. Because obviously Mary and Joseph had told Jesus who he was. Yeah, Mary and Joseph had the Spirit upon them, right? But apparently they were so distraught because they couldn't find him that God couldn't get through to them. Well, that's understandable. But why did they not understand that he must be about his father's business? They were raising him to do his father's business, right? So something's wrong there. Do you sense that too? But if you translate the text literally, quote, I should be in that which belongs to my father, unquote. That's what the Greek says, literally. Then we can understand both what Jesus meant and why his parents didn't get it. Because both Rude and Schoenheit point out that Jesus was saying, you should have known I'd be in the temple. That's the temple, is what belonged to his father. I should be in that which belongs to my father. All right? This is what his parents misunderstood because they were so distraught. The REV Bible commentary then explains, quote, at 12 years old, Jesus knows he's the promised Messiah and the Son of God, and he told his parents that he must be in his father's house, the temple. And he was surprised that they would think that he would be anywhere else. This verse shows a little of the workings of the mind of a 12-year-old who is the sinless Son of God. As a 12-year-old, he is appropriately disconnected from the pain his absence would have caused his parents. But as the Son of God, he already felt the mission of God working inside him and knew he must be in the temple. And he was sitting at the feet of the great teachers there, listening to them, asking them questions, and learning from them, unquote. That from the REV commentary is spot on. The last event, Event 1.29, Jesus grows up. Chapter 2, verse 51. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject unto them. But his mother kept all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. After the explanation of verse 49, there now is no tension implied between the parents and their precocious son. He was a sinless child. He was subject to his parents. But in light of his abilities at age 12, we can only imagine his growth in intellect and wisdom over the next 17 years. The gospel power team was gathering steam It was going to be them against the world. The irresistible force was going to come down upon the immovable object. Who would prevail? Tune in next week for the last episode of Chapter 1 of the Four Witnesses of the Messiah. Find out. Bless you.